Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky. Tonight we are joined by Nomar Slevik. How are you, sir? Welcome to Let's Get Freaky podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is cool.
I'm excited to have you, man. Are you so you're I know a lot of the books that you've written are based in Maine. Is that where you're
Yeah,
based?
yeah, it is. Um, uh, I do have a love for New England in general, which is a bunch of different states, and we're kind of like at the tip of those New England states. But being a resident of Maine, there's so much weird stuff that happens here that I just can't. Like, I'm compelled to collect and write about it and share it in a bunch of different mediums, with writing and podcasts and documentaries and there's a lot going on, and I want to try to document as much as I can while I'm here.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you tonight, but I generally want to move to New England. That that is my aim in the hopefully not
Wow.
too long future.
Wow.
That's where I want to be because it's
That's
just
cool.
such a beautiful place, man.
It
And
is.
obviously, I'm from the UK, and all the names are the same, so it's just
You're
like
right.
home
You
from
kind of
home.
fit in. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. You
I
kind of
already
fit
know the
in.
names of the places, man.
That's awesome.
So that is I've convinced the wife, and I think that is the plan in the future.
Wow.
And yeah,
Hey,
go on.
you get over here, you'll have to get like me and Mike and
Oh,
Kevin and get us all together.
yes, yeah, that's why I'm coming, man. That's why I'm doing this show. I'm making these
Yep.
connections, so I've got a lot of places I can stay. Hopefully,
Yeah, hell yeah.
travel around America. That's the
Yeah.
dream, man. That's the
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot, man. You've written books. You've got your own podcast. You've done documentaries. I mean, it's awesome stuff. I'd love to get into it all tonight, but can I ask? I'd like to go to the start. Where this all started for you? What got you into these subjects?
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago. I was a child and had what I think is my first encounter. I mean, you tell me. I was like 4 years old, and I had fallen asleep, and a loud bang had woken me up. And so my eyes kind of pop open, and I'm like looking around for an explanation. And I start hearing light taps at the window. So I look over there, and then I see the sky light up. And I was like, oh, it was thunder and lightning storm. So I'm like, cool. So I kind of like kneel up and look out the window. And at the time, I lived right at the tip of Maine in a town called Fort Kent. It can fit in the palm of your hand. It's so small. And right across the river was or is Canada. And I would actually get my haircuts as a child over in Canada. It was just hop, skip, and a jump over there. And customs was very easy at that time. You kind of drove through, said something real quick to the dude, and you just kind of kept going. And they check your trunk once in a while, but that was about it. And so I'm kneeling up, and the St. John River that separates America and Canada is going right by my window, and it's raging. So, like, there's a pretty big storm going on, and I'm watching the sky light up, and I'm seeing the streaks of lightning. And after a moment, there's like this really disturbing streak of lightning. And it's like if I were to ask you to draw a lightning bolt, you would draw like this jagged yellow line. It was stuck in a cloud, and there was electricity coming off of it, and there were booms associated with it, it seemed like. And that's how my mind remembers it. A lightning bolt stuck in a cloud. And even at like 4 years old, I knew you only saw lightning in a split second. So I knew it was weird. And then I'm not really sure what happened next, other than I guess I just fell back asleep. I wake up in the morning, and I go to use the bathroom. And as I'm walking from the bathroom back to my bedroom, I can see out my bedroom windows, and the lightning bolt is still there. Yeah. And I was like, that's not right. So I ran downstairs and I got my dad. I brought him all the way upstairs to show him, the lightning bolt in the sky, and it was gone. And I, I I must have been pretty insistent, because he had to like kind of tap on my head, and he's like, yeah, 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 okay. But I was like, kind of kept carrying on, and he had to like kneel down, get on my level, put his hands on my shoulders. And he's like, buddy, it didn't even rain last night. Like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Yeah. So being 4 years old, the next thing caught my attention and I kind of forgot about it. It was a few weeks later, maybe a month later, I'm woken up again in the middle of the night. And I don't, and when I say middle of the night, I'm 4 years old. So is that 9 p.m. or like 3 a.m.? I have no idea. But it's my dad waking me up, and he brings me downstairs, and I can see my mom is like shoving my sister into her like winter jacket and stuff. And then it's my turn and I get shoved into it. And then my dad picks me up, and all four of us go outside. Well, it's the middle of winter. And I got my head buried in his chest because it's freezing. And he keeps telling me, look up, you got to look up, bud. So finally, I take my head out and I look up and I see these really strange ribbons of light. And there's like greens and reds. And it was the northern lights, the aurora borealis. So I think those two things happening so close to each other created like this core memory for me. And that like weird shit happens in the sky. I should probably pay attention. So I really feel like that was the catalyst of everything. So when I got to be about 12, 13 years old, I've even before that I was really interested in like horror movies and ghost stories. My mom introduced me to horror movies, and she would tell me about her house being haunted when she was a little girl, and she was telling me those stories and I just eat them right up. And when I was 12 or 13, I thought back to that lightning bolt. I'm like, did I see a UFO? Like, because there was this weird object that was hovering, and there was electricity or laser beams or something coming out of it, and there was noise associated with it, and I don't know. So that really got my mind kind of rolling, and that happened in Maine. So I started to collect more Maine stories. And luckily, we had two really major encounters that happened in the 70s. And one of them got a lot of fanfare and was featured on Unsolved Mysteries. It was a favorite show of mine growing up. And, the theme music and Robert Stack's voice, like, still freaked me out.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries one night, and there was a story about a UFO, and these four men thought that they were abducted, and it happened just about 2 hours south of where I was living, and that like blew my mind. And of course I was thinking back to my own thing that I saw, and so that I think that furthered my collecting of stories and really got the ball rolling
Yeah.
on trying to catalog all these sightings and encounters from my home state. So long story longer, I think that's the catalyst.
That is a cool experience, man, to have as a 4-year-old. Can you
It
remember
was weird.
how big it was? I mean, I know it might be difficult.
Yeah, all I can remember is looking out my window, and my window had panes in it. So it kind of looked like tic-tac-toe, and there were nine small windows in this large window. And the lightning bolt kind of filled up one of the panes, you
Wow.
know. So it's pretty big, or it was close. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
because to me, the lightning bolt stuck in a cloud seemed like it was just right over the river. Like obviously over the treetops, but it wasn't celestial. It wasn't as high as the moon or whatever. It was like down in our atmosphere. But yeah, and there was also like this glow around it. You know how you see that with the sun sometimes when it's like about to rain or whatever. And so there was kind of like that halo around it too. But all I can picture it as is this lightning bolt stuck in a cloud. I can't see a better shape.
Yeah.
So
Because I guess as a 4-year-old, you probably didn't know too much about UFOs then.
yeah,
So you're
or
sort of,
nothing.
yeah, nothing about it. So what you're seeing is just your version of what you're seeing, and
Yeah.
to you it looks like a fun. That's amazing, man. That's
Yeah, and
cool.
I think because of the what I perceived, the taps I perceived as rain, and then seeing the sky light up. I think my mind was just telling me like, oh, it's a thunder and lightning storm, and then I see a bright object, and
Yeah.
I guess my young mind perceived it as a lightning bolt, and my adult mind can only remember back
Yeah.
to that.
So, yeah,
So
man. And it was still there in the morning as well. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's crazy because you don't hear about UFOs hovering for. And again, I don't know when I woke up. Was it 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. or 3 a.m.? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
So, was it there for 8 hours, just hovering and chilling for anybody to see,
yeah,
or
man.
was it there for just a couple hours?
Yeah,
I don't know. And I remember falling asleep, or I don't remember falling asleep. It's just the next thing I know, I'm waking up in the morning. So was I, because I've told this story a lot, and some people are like, oh, well, maybe you were abducted. Well, maybe, but I don't remember any of that if that's the case.
that's what I was thinking. That's where I was
Yeah.
gonna. That's where I was gonna go.
But it is curious that I'm seeing it. I'm like, that's weird. And now I'm waking up and it's morning.
Yeah,
You
that
know what I
is.
mean?
Yeah,
So
man. That
it,
does
it,
fit with
it's
a lot of
strange.
people's
Yeah.
experiences of being taken.
Yeah. And you had Mike Stevens on not that
Yeah.
long ago. And there's a lot of his stories where he remembers like the beginning and like the end of it, but there's not a whole
Yes.
lot in the middle, that he can remember. So maybe it's something like that, but I never talk about myself as being an abductee because I don't remember that at all. So, but I am an experiencer because I did see something, but
Yeah.
you
Did
know,
you have you ever thought about doing maybe regression or anything like that?
I've I've certainly thought about it over the years. Where my mind is now with with that sort of thing is that the mind is very malleable and fallible. So I think it could be suggestive. Like whoever's asking me the questions or putting me under, it's up to them to draw that information out of me. And I guess I would want to make sure I'm not asked leading questions, and I don't know how
Yes.
to monitor that if I'm under, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess
Yeah,
that's
man.
how I currently feel about it. But my opinion could change again.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. And it's
Mm,
like with a lot of us guys that look into this sort of stuff, it starts normally very young as a kid.
mm,
You have an experience that changes your concept, and that's it. You're
right.
in, and there's no
Yeah.
going back. Once you see
Yeah.
something like that, there's no going back, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I feel like I have a skeptical mind. I definitely don't believe everything that I hear. But a lot of the times, and that's because and that doesn't matter what I believe, because I'm a storyteller. I share people's stories. So what I feel is important is if I believe that they believe it, that's good enough for me. I have talked to some people where in my mind I thought, oh, you're straight up lying to me. I don't know why. I don't know what your agenda is, but I don't believe you at all. So I don't say that to them. I thank them for telling me the story, but I just never follow up with them. I don't publish a story, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but the people that I believe, or I at least believe that they believe it, it's a lot of compelling stuff. And I I have this need like to share it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
man.
and I think I don't know if I'm just telling myself this, um to make it worth the effort, but it feels like it's also a matter of historical record, and there's not a lot of people other than other authors and researchers that are documenting this stuff, to catalog it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm kidding myself by telling myself that, but it feels important when I put it that way, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it
man.
helps.
It
it
is
helps
important.
me.
That's for
Yeah, yeah.
sure. I mean, the thing that I find so interesting is how common this stuff is. I've always known that a lot of people have had experiences and stuff like that. I've had experiences, and you talk to people all the time that have had experience, but there's so many people out there. I mean, obviously, with what you do and what I do, uh, this conversation comes up a lot, and 9 times out of 10, people have had some sort of. I was talking to a guy tonight that I didn't. He's seen a UFO in the sky. He believes, and I don't think he's massively into the subject like we are. But I
Yeah.
just find it so interesting how many people have had some sort of experience. It's so common. It's so
It
common.
it is. I was recently at a car dealership, and I was helping a family member kind of through the process, like I wasn't getting the vehicle. And there was a waiting period, and the salesman and I and this family member were all sitting there, and they were like, so what do you do? And I started talking about what I do, and he was like, well, that's really interesting. He's like, I'm from Russia, And when I was 7 years old, I was just playing in my living room, and I just something caught my attention to look outside, and there was a bright blue sky, there was no clouds, and there were 3 black objects up in the sky, and they were just hovering there. And as I watched them, they just disappeared. And I thought that was really strange, and then I kind of went back to playing, but I never forgot about that. So, and the point there is a lot of people have these encounters. Like I'm just chilling minding my business, and all of a sudden this dude from Russia is telling me about an experience he had as a kid, and it's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, man. And I'm sure, I bet he's probably never uh put that anywhere official, like in your book.
Right,
Your
right, right,
your encounters that are in your book, they're going to be there forever. They're logged forever.
right.
And there's so many out there that are not. And there's so
Yeah.
many, like my granddad, for example, he had a great UFO experience where he was walking his dogs in the fields, and he went onto a golf course, and he saw this black object come up from the trees and come towards him. And now
Wow.
this is going back years ago. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
drones weren't around then that we know of. They might have been, but that we know of. And
Right.
this black object followed him, and he got scared by this, and he took the dogs and he went through the forest, and he said he could see this thing between the trees following him. And
Wow.
then he found a scout group and joined joined the scout group to get away, and it sort of disappeared. But
Wow.
that story's never gonna, like, apart from me telling you now,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
not logged anywhere, That's
Right.
just his story. I'll keep telling it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, that's what I love about what you do. And that's why I do this show as well, because
Yeah.
it's a record as well, man.
Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands, probably millions of stories out there. And 1% of them will be told, and that's tragic to me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And I also like to share, just because I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've heard so many different types of stories. So for me to like get to the point of wanting to put it in a book or a documentary or share it on a podcast or whatever, it's got to be, kind of interesting. Not just, I was walking around, there's a light in the sky and blah, blah, blah. For the person experiencing that, that can be life changing. And I get
yeah,
that. And it's not lost on me, but I am, and you probably are desensitized a bit, just like watching horror movies. It takes a lot to kind of get us going for a good scare or whatever, so I am looking for the more whimsical, crazy creature type encounters, UFO landings, being inside of a UFO, abductions, all that stuff
yeah,
is kind of like my bread and butter. But I will talk to anybody about anything. Geez, this might have been last summer. I got a random email. It's like, hey, you don't know me, but I got your email address from, blah, blah, blah. And I had a UFO sighting, and they were in a town that's like 3 hours south of me. And can I talk to you about it? And sure, so we set up a time, and we set up actually just a Skype call, and they tell me that they're driving at night right in town, which is a very populated area. And as they're driving, they see this really bright light, 50 feet above the street, so like there should be hundreds of witnesses. And as she's driving, she's not seeing anybody looking up except for the car that was in front of her. They were looking up at it as well and pointing. They could see them pointing and stuff. And she's like, and then it just kind of, ascended and eventually took off out of sight. Um, so that was really cool to talk about. And I was very honest with her. I was like, that's a really cool experience. But I don't have any answers for you. You certainly saw something that was unidentified and also flying.
yeah,
But is it an extraterrestrial vehicle? I don't know. But it's a cool experience, and I appreciate knowing that happened and when it happened and all that good stuff. And I'm going to log it. And she just felt like I assume, because we had a very cordial and nice interaction, that she was appreciative of a kind and non-judgmental ear, and it seemed as though felt better to get it off her chest. And I'm not going to document it in one of my books, but I do have it in my notes, and maybe those will be donated at some time. But so, I'll talk to anybody about any encounter. I just don't document absolutely everything. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
I
Yeah.
guess for someone like you that must be getting thousands of people giving you encounters and stuff. It must be difficult.
Um, I wish it was thousands, but I do I do get a lot. And but again, so like the majority is, nighttime seeing a light in the sky. And
Yeah.
nowadays, it could be almost anything, and so that's a little bit tough. But when I hear a really interesting story, like there's a story from a woman living in, I think it was in southern Maine, and she was talking on the phone one night, and it was like a summer night, so she had her door opened and also a screen door, but the screen door was closed, and her dog was sitting at the screen door and looking outside, and she's on the phone talking to somebody, and all of a sudden the dog starts barking at something that's outside. So she's like, what are you doing, like shush. And so continue to try to talk on the phone, but the dog's being insistent now, so she's like, hold on a second. And she looks outside, and she sees what she perceived as a very tall alien-like creature kneeling down at the base of a tree and looking at the dog very intently, and the dog is looking at the creature, barking its head off. And she's looking at the creature and the dog and is like, what the? So she's like, I got to call you back. Gets off the phone, and the dog just bursts through the screen door and starts running after this creature. The creature gets up. She sees that it's about 7, 8 feet tall. And as it's running, it starts to disappear, or does the predator cloaking thing from the feet up. And
Wow.
yeah, so this creature is disappearing, and like just before the head like disappears, sorry, she could see it look back at the dog, and now it's gone. So the dog like stops running, but is continuing to bark at whatever it is, and she can't see it anymore, but she's freaked out, and she finally gets the dog back inside, and she yells for her boyfriend, who was doing who knows what, because the dog was freaking out. She doesn't know why he wasn't down there, but he comes down, and she starts telling him like what she saw and everything, and he believes her, like he doesn't have any reason to think that she was lying. And they eventually went outside and looked by the tree to see if there's any tracks or anything to show that something was there, and they didn't see anything. But what a fascinating little story, and it all happened within like 3 minutes.
Did
And
she
go ahead,
did
I'm
she
sorry.
say what the creature looked like? Did it look like
Yeah,
a
she said it was so very tall, very skinny. She essentially described it as like a tall gray. So it had the bulbous head, very spindly arms, super thin arms, almost a distended stomach, and really thin legs and really large feet. You know, and she couldn't tell if she was looking at skin or a suit, but she did say the color was like uniform throughout, so it was either all skin or all suit. And there's a lot of theories that grays are wearing like what we see as a suit that they're wearing, so I
yeah,
could see that, because it seems weird that they would be naked, but yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But who knows? But just a fascinating
man,
3 minutes that,
yeah.
when I heard that, I was just, oh my
And that
god.
that was big as well, man. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. Yeah. And to have the dog react like that, is very compelling. So there was outside factors, because I have heard stories where UFOs were present or creatures were present, but the animals didn't react, and that's where I call into question the story that's being told to me. I don't question the person, but in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, you would think, even if it was like a deer or something, like your animal would like bark or react.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't know, but it just, the way she told it, it was just very matter of fact. Like it was just a random night, like 7:30 at night, just on the phone with a friend. All of a sudden the dog's freaking out, and then she sees a creature. Like,
yeah,
yeah. And again, I still don't know if I 100% believe it all happened, but it's a fascinating story that I think a lot of people need
yeah, man.
to know.
Yeah. I bet that one made the book, right?
It did.
Yeah. Man, that is wild.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on, I know this is difficult as well because we're trying to find out, we're all working together to try and get the answers, but what are your thoughts on what these UFOs are? what these entities are? I mean, I know it's a very difficult question because
Yeah,
we don't
it is.
know. But
Yeah,
where are
we
you
don't
right
know.
now with it all?
Yeah, that's a really good way of asking it. Like, where am I at right now? Because it does, ebbs and
Yeah,
flows.
same man.
Yeah,
Changes every day.
yeah. The one thing I know after over 20 years, it might be over 25 years now. Like, I'm old, just so you know.
No.
And the one thing that I am 100% sure of is that I have way more questions than answers. I don't know what they are. I typically tend to believe that they are a entity of some sort outside of our solar system that are traveling here in some sort of vehicle, and some of them abduct us. I don't know why, and some of them are just observing. That's a very general way of what I typically just kind of walk around with in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But when I get down to specifics, is it this race or is it that race? Or, like, what are they? Where are they coming from? Are they ultra terrestrial, coming from within Earth, which is a really interesting theory. I don't buy into any of it, and I buy into all of it because I want to keep an open mind and I want to try to keep my finger on the pulse of it as much as is possible.
yeah,
So I'm open to hearing people, but one thing I've done over the last probably 10 years now, but definitely like over the last 5 years, is anytime somebody says they're an expert, I stop listening because you're not. you know this is a lot of weird shit that's very undefined, and
yeah,
you're not an expert. You
yeah,
could be an expert in a case. Roswell, Exeter, Betty and Barney Hill. There's so many famous cases that you could know inside and out. You might be an expert on a case.
yeah.
You're not an expert on the phenomenon. You
No.
don't know what races are. You don't know what this is. You don't know what that ship is. You don't know. And I think there's a lot of bullshit happening on that side of things, and that kind of sucks for ufology, but we all have to exist within it. So I kind of keep my head down and keep my work going. So when it comes to like races and what things are, I don't know. I
Yeah,
can say, oh, you're describing something that sounds like a gray alien, but that's just for me and the person and what I'm relaying to somebody like in a book or in a documentary or on a podcast. They can picture that in their head. So that's why that information might come out. But it doesn't mean I'm saying it is a gray alien. It looks like the prototypical, gray alien. But anyway,
yeah.
so I guess that's kind of a long-winded way of of kind of answering the question.
Because the thing, if we had any experts in any of the paranormal subjects,
Yeah.
we wouldn't need to have these conversations because we'd know it all.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and we
Yeah. Yeah.
don't. We certainly don't. And everyone's experiences are unique. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, you do find similarities and a lot of
Yeah.
similarities in these things, but
Sure.
there is a lot of unique things out there. I think
Yeah.
possibly that that all these things could exist. Some of these could be interdimensional, some could be from outer space, some could be from Hollow Earth. I think the possibility of all of them could be, but
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree.
you're right though that nobody's got the answers. That's for sure. Well, if they have, they
Right.
haven't presented it yet.
Yeah. David Grush, who came out and was part of the, UFO hearings, he's got a whole lot of interesting information. And conveniently, says my conspiracy mind, you can't validate any of it because of NDAs and things you can't talk about. So I feel like if you're getting in front of our government saying this stuff, maybe you should be able to back it up, because I think all he's doing is sensationalizing everything. A lot of people see that here, and they're like, and there's memes going around, the government admitted to aliens being real, and we're just like, ugh, I just got to get through the day. My anxiety's through the roof. And those are great memes and I love them and all that good stuff. But that's not that has never happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The government hasn't admitted that there's aliens. What's cool is that the government is sitting and listening to people who say that they are real. And there's other people like Ryan Graves, who's had documented experiences captured on camera, with all of these tapes coming out, which is really cool. But you get somebody like Rush in there, and again, I'm a Grush proponent, but with the extraordinary claims, you got to give us something, man. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And now where he's starting to work with Jeremy Corbell, that makes me not feel good about the situation, because I feel like all Jeremy does is sensationalize everything. And now he's got George Knapp, who's had this amazing legacy, starting with like Bob Lazar and even, before that. And it's kind of being tarnished with all of this weaponized bullshit that he's doing with Corbell. And that really
yeah.
sucks to see, in my opinion. And again, these are just my opinions, not that of of Tommy. but
That's cool, man. That's cool.
but I don't like that part of ufology. It's very entertainment
Hmm.
forward, it's very flashy. The TMZ 3-part series that was on Tubi that heavily featured Jeremy and Knapp and the hearings and all that good stuff was a very flashy thing to watch. But there's a lot of videos that Corbell has shown
Yeah.
that have come out to be like hoaxes or misidentifications, especially this one that kind of looks like this weird jellyfish thing that's like,
Yeah, that was quite
flying.
recent, wasn't it? It was
It
quite, well,
was,
a little
and
while ago.
it's really compelling and interesting video, but it has been disproven a bunch of different times of being this certain type of, I forget what country it was. I don't know if it was Iraq or something like that, but it was a certain set of mylar balloons that was in a certain symbolism for their religion, for somebody's birthday, something like that. And you
Ah, okay.
you look at them side by side, and it's the exact same thing. Like, that's what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So it sucks that, this thing on Tubi comes out and millions of people can see it, but you don't, it's just a YouTuber or somebody, trying to put something out that doesn't get as many eyes on it, and unless you're like somebody like us that are just like ensconced in it all the
yeah,
time,
yeah,
so some of that stuff is like annoying, but at the same time, like 20 years ago, I would have been dying to see, UFO hearings on television and seeing all this mainstream media on UFOs. So it's a double-edged sword. So like it's all great, but it's all like, oh, you
yeah.
know.
It must be quite mad for you. As you say, you've been doing this 20 years. You must be seeing, especially in the last couple of years, even I've noticed it in the last couple of years, this huge jump with the mainstream. How was it back in 20 years ago? Obviously, when you talk about this 20 years ago,
Yeah,
you was probably
it
getting a
was.
lot of a different response, I would have
I
thought.
wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say like a lot different, because I, do pick who I choose to talk to.
Yeah.
But as far as mainstream goes, it was, if it was like the anniversary of Roswell, it would be kind of a, a, a loose sort of or casual clip at the end of news, like, oh, 50 years ago, Roswell happened, and they do, and they played the Twilight Zone music, and and they don't take it very seriously. And or something with the paranormal or Bigfoot or UFOs, there'll be a story tacked on to the last 3 minutes of a news segment during Halloween or something like that. And that's how a lot of that was handled, except for, your unsolved mysteries or your X-Files being, like a huge show at the time going on. And it's a lot different now where, on CNN, they'll just do like a breaking news and you'll see like some UFO footage, and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Every day it seems.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
quite often.
Or we're shooting down,
Yeah.
unidentifieds or whatever. And it's crazy. But yeah, 20 years ago, it was a puff piece, at the end of a news show or something like that. Sometimes interestingly, like Larry King would do like a serious like UFO. He'd dedicate a whole show to it, and that'd be interesting. That he took it seriously. I think he had a belief. I haven't gotten into why, or if he had experiences or whatever, but that was interesting that he would cover it. Also, you had those shows back in the day too, like Inside Edition, which still might be on. But there were some other shows too that were kind of like tabloid TV, and they would have some of these stories, but you couldn't take them, or you could only take them at face value because of the type of show it was on.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but I guess that's my thought on that.
yeah, man. I mean, you got it seems it's everywhere now. You got Joe Rogan, I think, has played a big part in that as well,
Oh,
talking about
sure.
it a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I love it, man. What do you think of the recent it was a very recent video of the UFO captured on a plane in New
Oh,
York?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think it
That's
was
like super recent, like
yeah,
maybe
very
last
recent.
week.
Yeah, I shared it on Instagram yesterday, I think it was,
Not
but
nice, nice.
it was it a commercial flight from Florida to New York? And I think
Yeah.
passengers called it. What do you think of that
Yeah.
one, man?
I thought it was a great video because it looked like she was genuinely taking video of like the shore and waters of, like New York Island proper. And that is a pretty view. And that does make sense to be taking video of it.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden you see this black streak go by.
very
And she,
quick.
yeah, and she was even like, oh, is that a bug? But you see it like leave the, the frame, and she wasn't seeing it in the airplane itself. You know what I mean? So she's like, okay, I guess that was outside of the plane. And then you slow it down, and it's literally like a black cylinder, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy good footage. And from what she said in her interviews, she contacted proper authorities, FAA, things like that. And nobody really wanted to listen to her about it. They're like, yeah, we'll check it out. And so she decided to go to the news with it, and it kind of blew up and went viral. And yeah, I think it's great footage.
yeah, man. It is. What's your because there's a lot of and I'm guilty of this as well. I've got to be honest. On my social media, I share a lot of stuff that could be real, might not be real. I don't
Sure.
know, but it looks cool. It looks
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
share it. I hope it's real.
Yeah.
Um, but what do you think? Because there's so much out there. There's so many amazing videos out there. It's very
Yeah.
hard to tell now.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with AI too, like it's gonna continue to be even harder to tell. Like, the old adage was video doesn't lie, and it only lies now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Or has the potential of only lying. So for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, it's tough to trust anything. I feel the way she captured it was really organic and genuine seeming. So I think it's cool footage. Am I going to say that that was a UFO, an extraterrestrial aircraft? Absolutely not. I don't know. But she there's a cool capture. And if I
yeah,
was her, I would have done the same thing. I would have tried to contact the appropriate authorities if they didn't give a shit. Okay, I guess I'll go to the media now,
yeah,
and
yeah,
share the video, because it's cool as hell, and we don't know what it was. And she wasn't saying I captured an alien aircraft. She wasn't saying that.
yeah.
She was saying that she caught something weird, and she did.
I mean, it's definitely something that it's either technology that we're not allowed to know about yet.
Right. Which is possible.
Yeah, I think very possible, man. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there's something to that because a lot of
Yeah.
the time there doesn't seem to be. I know obviously people are not going to show fear on the telly and stuff, but there doesn't seem to like that video is amazing, man. And it's
Yeah.
just like there should be panic. What is that?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
dangerous. If there's that's flying
And
around planes and
yeah, and I feel like it's things like that that I hope is why the government is starting to take it more seriously. Because if that was like a drone, which it could have been, either a commercial or a civilian drone, either way, that's really dangerous, and I'm pretty sure illegal
yeah,
to fly that close to a
yeah,
plane.
man, yeah,
So if it was military, why are you flying it over New York City near jets and airplanes that civilians use? That makes no sense. So it's probably not military. It's probably not a drone because we would be hearing that the dude got arrested or whatever. um, so what else could it be? Could it be foreign adversary? Well, maybe we had the shot down things that happened last year. So is it more of that, and that's why they're not talking? Possible. Is it extraterrestrial, or something like that? Possible. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to kind of lean that way more, that it's something unknown, either foreign or like really foreign, um, as opposed to something military or civilian with a drone, because I feel like the military part doesn't make sense. Like, why do it there?
yeah,
Unless they're trying to perpetuate UFO stuff, and that gets into a whole other conspiracy thing, which again is possible.
yeah, yeah.
But if it was a drone thing, we love watching people get arrested and knowing about
Yeah,
all that stuff, and I really feel like if it was a civilian person with a drone, we would know about that.
yeah, yeah. What I find interesting, man, I've been watching UFO documentaries for years, and
Sure.
they all used to say back in the day that this will be drip fed to us
Yeah.
slowly, 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 and we'll get more used to it, and then aliens will be taking over the world. And that's sort of how it's been, and that seems to be happening with the
It's
drip
kind
fed.
of happening. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of happening. And I feel like it was real drip drip slow for a
Yeah,
while, from like 70s until what, 2017. And then it was exponential after the big New York Times article, which kind of exploded everything. And I really think it forced the government's arm, to start talking about this stuff more, because you can't have an article come out like that on such a big newspaper and not be responsive to it,
yeah,
because it's not the government of the 60s anymore, or the 50s, or the 40s. It's the government of how it is now, and you can't continue to hide things
yeah,
and expect everybody to be cool with it, so they had to start doing some things. And even now, even though there's been a handful of hearings, and there have been some reports that have come out, and NASA's doing their thing, there's still this big bubble of the government going, we got a big fat goose egg about the existence of extraterrestrials. The latest report came out, it's like, no evidence of it, even though we have some clearly unidentified reports that we cannot close. It is not aliens, and so they're still taking that stance
yeah,
despite being more open-minded. I don't know why that's happening. And I, as long as I've been able to think for myself, I've haven't been one to 100% trust my government. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to start now, just because they're starting to
yeah,
have UFO hearings and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah, man, yeah.
take what
It's
they
it's
say with a grain of salt, and
it's one of those. We've all been saying that the UFOs are real, and as soon as the government start talking about it, we're like, no, there's something going on here.
this doesn't
This
smell
is
right.
Project Bluebeam. This is not.
Right, right, right.
It's interesting, man. Because
Yeah,
we was going through a phase where things were happening daily. There
yeah,
was pulling out bodies from Mexico,
yeah,
and then aliens were attacking the mall in Miami, and
yeah.
it's just got wild, man.
I know. And there's some strange stuff, just because you mentioned the Miami aliens stuff. There's admittedly some strange stuff with that. However, we live in an age where everybody and their mother has a cell phone, and we don't have any clear footage. We have a lot of footage of elongated shadows, misidentified groupings of people that look different than what they normally look like, and are being considered as, oh, that's the aliens. So while that's a fascinating thing, and if I lived in Florida and I was writing books about Florida UFOs, that story would be in the book.
Yeah,
But I take it with a grain of salt, you know what I mean? And the stuff that happened in Nevada with the 8 foot tall aliens, the family saw these 8 foot tall aliens, and the meteors went by, at that kind of same time. Those were captured on camera and all that stuff. It's kind of gotten this resurgence now, and with the family
yeah,
saying that it's actually demons. And that's scary. When I for me, it's scary when religion gets wrapped up into honestly anything, but with UFOs specifically, that's like a weird thing. And because demons are bad, so now aliens are inherently bad. And I mean, you talk to abductees, even like Travis Walton, who maybe the initial thing seemed really frightening, but over the years he's like, I think the aliens were actually helping me. And so it might not be, there might be bad sex, like sects
yeah,
of aliens, and also good ones, you know what I mean? So I also don't like it when religion gets wrapped up into stuff, so I, I don't know if they're going for their second 15 minutes of fame, but that whole thing, when it first happened, smelled just like the Miami
Yeah.
aliens at the mall, where there was people with cell phones and nothing looks like aliens. You can see like weird shadows and stuff, but yeah. And there's a really interesting um, piece of video that shows like this circular area of dirt where it looked like something landed, but you just do the tiniest bit of research, and a pool was there previously, and
Yeah.
so it's people trying to, you know, take advantage or get their 15 minutes or whatever. And again, it's annoying and frustrating, but it's going to happen. So it is
Because
what it
I
is.
did see a video of that story
Mhm.
the other day actually. So this
Mm.
is probably a fresh video that's doing the rounds now.
Okay.
Of they was claiming that the video that we saw where there was a possible entity. It was hard to see,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
apparently there's a newer one come out where there's like a perfect. I mean, I don't know. I saw it the other
Have you?
day. It's probably not real. I don't know, man. I really don't know. I hope it's
All right.
real, but
Did you post it?
I didn't post it. No. So
Okay,
that's how
I'm gonna.
if I thought it was real, I would have posted it, but I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah, yeah.
sure.
All right. Well, I'm gonna after this. I'm gonna seek it out because I haven't seen any good footage. So
Yeah. No, I think
I'll check it out.
this was sort of something added onto the
Yeah, yeah,
video,
yeah,
but I don't know. So it just goes with what you're saying that they're trying to bring that story back.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
interesting, though, man. It is
yeah.
interesting.
And again, if I was living in Nevada, and I'd be writing about Area 51 all the time, and the Janet Airlines and all that bullshit, and I would also like be talking to this family and be like,
Yeah.
"Yo, let's connect, let's talk," and I would probably be sharing their story too. And again, that's not to sensationalize it, but I would be interviewing them in a legitimate way and asking, in my opinion, rational questions, and hopefully getting rational answers back. And you can learn a lot by sitting with somebody in person, and you can, hear the tone in their voice and see their mannerisms and their body language. And it can tell you a lot. And I don't always have that luxury. A lot of times, maybe 50% of the time, people want to stay anonymous or don't want to meet, but we'll talk over, a messaging service of some sort, or we'll only do a phone call or something.
Yeah.
But if I can be in front of somebody, that's my favorite thing. It really helps with my personal belief in what they're telling me. And,
Yeah.
so
You get a feel with people, don't you? You get a
yeah, yeah,
feel.
yeah. It's a gut feeling, and it's based on nothing other than just interacting with people your whole life. And a bullshit artist when you meet one,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's I like it when I can sit with somebody and talk to
Yeah.
them face to face.
Yeah, man. 'Cause I get people reaching out to me, telling me their paranormal experiences, and I love it, whether they want to come on the show or not. I love hearing people's experiences. And what I find interesting is when people reach out, they tell me their experiences. I'll always say, "Do you want to come and share it on the show?" And sometimes people go, "No, no, I just wanted to tell you and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
your
yeah.
thoughts on it and just get it out, basically." Because
Yeah, get it off their
it's
chest, and they feel
sometimes it's
better,
hard to,
hopefully.
yeah, 100%, yeah. It's hard to talk about this stuff.
It is. I was doing a book fair, uh not last December, 2 Decembers ago. And so I was a vendor and I was selling my books, and there was another vendor who was part of like a team, and they were also selling books. They were part of a bookstore that were also at this event. And halfway through the show, one of the people that was running the booth over there walked over to me and started looking at my books and stuff. And they said, one of my kids saw an alien. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, yeah. One of my kids saw an alien. It was really a really interesting story. And this wasn't the time or place to have that conversation. So I was like, do you think I could like get your number and talk to you later about it? She's like, yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. So I take down her number and all that good stuff. And I meet with her like 2 weeks later, and she invites me to her home. And her three kids are there, and they're all like 4 or 5 years old. And this happened just like last year. So they're like 3 or 4 years old. I'm sorry, 2 years ago. So they're like 3 years old. And it was me and her wife. And the kids were kind of like running around, and they would stop in once in a while, at the table, and, like check in with mom and stuff. But they told me this story about one of their kids was upstairs with their sister, and this insect, this ant, this large ant, walked in, picked me up, and bit me on the inside of my stomach. They then like put me down and they started walking away, and they started like backing up, walking away. And then they turned around to like head out the door. They did one look back, one last look back, and then proceeded to like walk out the bedroom door and like down the stairs. And they had heard the door open, the outside door open, and the insect left. So I'm like, that's insane. So she's like, yeah, yeah. So I started asking questions, and we got out one of his nature books, and we were looking through insects. Like, did it look like that? And he's like, no. Did it look like that? And like, no. And it got to the ants and to the crickets and things like that. And that's what it started looking more like. But it was like, a 5, 6 foot tall version of it, you know. And she said he also started to refer to things as like, if he would draw a picture, a house and people like drawing his family and stuff, be like, well, that's the house, and here's the kitty, and these are the humans, as opposed to mom, and and saying the names like these people were the humans. And she thought that
Yeah.
was interesting, so very interesting story. It's a little bit more involved, but that's like the crux of the story. So fast forward 6 months, I'm in the same town, but I happen to be at a tire place. I need new tires for my car so I can pass inspection. We have local inspections, and it's a whole thing. So I'm at this discount tire place, buying used tires because I'm a writer and that's how life is. And I'm waiting for these guys to like install them all. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to the owner of the building, and it always comes like, what do you do? I start to tell him what I do, and he goes, I had a thing happen like 5 years ago. I was up really early. It was like 5 a.m. And I was outside in my little workshop, kind of tinkering around. And I had the door open and I was drinking my coffee. And I started to hear like a buzzing sound, almost like a motor. And so I went outside and I was looking in my backyard, and his backyard kind of ends, and then there's a road, and then there's a big field. And he said the motor sound started getting louder, and he saw these two insect like beings on top of what looked like motorcycles, but they hovered. They didn't have wheels, like Star Wars type style. You know what I mean? And they
Wow.
they, they went whizzing by, and that was it. And I was like, what? Like, that's crazy, And this is like some white cis man, who's like a Mainer, meaning when I say the word Mainer, like we're reserved, and especially people of his age, the boomer generation, they don't want to be perceived as crazy or whatever, and he just
Yeah.
told me this crazy story. And the fact that they looked like aliens, and I mean, sorry, insects, and the little boy had an
Yeah.
insect experience in the same town.
That's
I'm like,
wild.
is there some sort of insect, invasion going on in
Yeah.
this little town in Maine, And so I actually ended up contacting one of the mothers and hey, just so you know, I was told this. That's kind of crazy, right? And they're like, oh my God, that's nuts. And so of course all of that made the book.
Yeah. That's
I
wild.
I forget why I went into that story, but
That's
there's
wild.
there's
But
that story.
it's that connection, as you say, the same area.
Yeah, yeah,
It,
yeah.
it paints that picture of that this could be something that's going on in that area. That's wild, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
And
I
there's
go
these
ahead. I'm
people
sorry.
haven't got anything to gain from lying about this.
Right,
If
right.
if any, I say a lot of the time when you put this stuff out, you could damage yourself potentially if you're depending on what you want to
Absolutely.
do and stuff. So they're not getting
Absolutely.
nothing from lying about it. So
Yeah.
that's wow, man. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Do you know if the child had any more experiences
They have they live in a really old house, so all of them have had paranormal experiences. There's even a ghost that like hangs out outside of the house, which is interesting, and sometimes they see him like hiding behind a tree, like peeking out at them and stuff. I think they call him, I can't remember if they call him the man with the hat or the tall man or something, but he's like this older,
Hat man.
tall looking guy, and sometimes he'll like get in the car and sit with them when they're like about ready to take off, which is really weird. And also the, I think it was just the mothers. I can't remember about the kids, but the mothers, when they're like sitting outside during the summer, their house kind of overlooks a bay, and they'll see lights in the sky that are outside the typical flight path. Cause I think the flight path is like one way and they're seeing lights going the other way, you know? And, but they're always like celestial, like star sized, but they seem weird. They take right angles and, you know,
Yeah.
really weird stuff like that. But yeah, so they've had some continuing experiences. But any more stuff specifically with alien creatures inside the house and biting them on the inside of their stomach?
Yeah.
No, but geez,
That's
crazy stuff.
wild, man.
Yeah.
Do you find that a lot where you get like a story like that where they could sort of coincide and the people don't know each other, so there's no way
Oh,
that
yeah, that's kind of happened. Or there, especially the way my new book is. There's a section that's broken up by the entire state. And I kind of run down the state going from north to south, and I'm covering all these towns. And there'll be towns with 3 or 4 different experiences, you know, throughout the years that I'm telling. And some of them seem related, like they're, you know, similar aircraft description, you know, maybe similar creature description, things like that. And there was one that happened in, I think it was 65, and there was this little girl who was out in a field with 2 of her cousins, and this egg-shaped UFO landed in the field next to them. Actually, the 2 cousins had gone home to like grab something, and the little girl stayed while her cousins ran home because it was just, you know, just down the road. And that's when this thing landed next to her, and it was like as big as like a Volkswagen Beetle type of car, but oval shaped and standing on, you know, vertically. And there was a little window in it. I think there was a light on top that was blinking, she said. And there was a little window, and she said she saw this man's head pop up, and he was wearing a helmet, and he took the helmet off, and he started to say something to her, but she couldn't hear him because he was inside the ship. You know, and she's like, "Oh, what? That's crazy." And then she started to get scared. She's like, I don't like this. She was pretty young. She was like 6 or 7. So she ran home and she told mom all about it. And mom was pretty dismissive at first. And the story kind of goes on. But a couple of weeks later, in a different, I think it was like 30 miles away. So it's not the same town, but we're talking 30 miles away, at like as the crow flies. So not far. And there's this guy, and he's in a town called Bangor, which is a bigger metropolitan area compared to where this little girl was. And he was by this water type area, and this egg shaped craft kind of like came down, and he's watching it, and it got really, really low to the ground where it's moving towards him, and it's just scraping the brush, you know, that's right there on the ground, and he's freaking out. So he goes into his car, and he has a gun in his glove box, like a pistol, and he kind of sets up like behind the car, and he's like doesn't want this thing to come closer, but it keeps getting closer, so he fires at it, and he says he hears the bullet ricochet off of it, and it started to do like this wobble thing back and forth, and then it started coming right at him again. So he fired a couple of more shots, and the bullets were ricocheting off. Finally it just went and took off. So he's freaking
wow.
out. He gets in the car and he drives down to the police department. He tells those guys what he experienced. They believe him because they see this old guy, you know, talking about seeing a spaceship. He's got a gun in his car and he's scared as hell. So they're like, we should probably go check this out. He refuses to go back there, but he tells the guys where it happened. And when they went there, the police went to go check it out. They could see where some of the brush had been burned by
Wow, man.
something that had touched it. And with a lack of any other evidence, though, they couldn't investigate really anymore. But those happened, like a couple of weeks or a month apart from each other and just like 30 miles away. And the vehicles were described very similarly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Have you? I know there's been bigger UFO events in Maine.
sure.
Have you seen? Have you got any accounts where there's been multiple witnesses? Or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
can you share some of them?
Sure. So there's a Air Force base that's now defunct, but it ran from, geez, 50 something to like 1994. And that's also in northern Maine, just a little bit south of where I used to live in Fort Kent, probably an hour south, maybe even just a half hour. Anyway, huge Air Force base. It was integral for, World War II. It was a SAC base. It had nuclear weapons there at different points. And a lot of different things happened over there during the years. Everything that I could find is in the book. So a bunch of shit happened there. But the big stuff, the real big encounter where there was even a book written about it, happened in 1975 in October. And it was like over the course of 3 nights. And it's kind of a long story, but long story short, there was this light seen over the airbase, and it was seen over the nuclear weapons storage area. It was seen like by the runway, it was seen by the control tower, and people like they saw it on radar, but soldiers and MP officers were seeing it with their own eyes. And it got to the point where the highest ranking officer on the base, who's the wing commander, he's hearing all this chatter and he's like, what the hell? So he goes outside and he sees it with his own eyes.
Wow.
So this all culminates to where the UFO is seen hovering just above the runway, just about 5 feet over the runway. So there's Maine State Police and there's military police kind of converging on where this object is. They stop like 100 yards in front of it. So you got police officers, you got military, and they're all stopped. They're all out of their vehicles. They got guns, and they're looking at what soldiers and police officers described as like this football shaped thing about 30 feet across. And it's not metal, it's like plasma going over it. And they're all staring at it and looking at each other. And what in the F do we do? You know what I mean? And then before they could even plan on something, it disappears in front of their eyes. It then appears on radar. The tower starts radioing them, the people that were down on the runway. And it's the same object is now over Nova Scotia, which is like hundreds of miles away. And this was like 10 seconds later.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like the big event. And there was like an investigation done, and all of the bases that are kind of like sister bases to this place were put on I think it was a level 3 alert. I don't have like the information in front of me, but it's called something. And all the bases that are sister bases, which some of them aren't even close, but it's still a sister base, were all put on this same alert that night that this happened. And after an official investigation happened, the base confirmed that it was a helicopter and that it was drug smugglers in a helicopter. So these journalists from Boston kind of caught wind of this story and they thought it was really interesting. So they did a whole bunch of digging and a whole lot of interviews and a whole lot of investigating. And it got to the point where the Air Force Base admitted that it remains unknown. They didn't admit anything else, but it wasn't,
Interesting.
drug smugglers and helicopters.
Yeah. I mean, if
But
high ranking people in the military are seeing stuff like that, I
I
mean,
know, I know. So
wow.
in 2017, I believe, I decided I wanted to go to the base. I wanted to write about the story, but I wanted to end the chapter about me being there. So I go up and I try to do things the right way. I didn't always, and sometimes we get in trouble, but I'm too old for that shit now. So when I got there, I went to the cop shop and I was like, yo, here's what I'm doing. And, I'm going to be on the base and it's going to be like, 3 o'clock in the morning probably. And, all this stuff. And they're like, okay, weirdo, have fun. And so I'm on the base and I'm in the approximated area from what I could tell by reading, different accounts of what happened on where this thing hovered and where the police were and all this stuff. And when you're on the runway up there, like it's a defunct base, so it's completely abandoned. But there's businesses that are around the peripheral, but the runway is still there. At least at the time that I was there, it was still there, and you could like during the day, you could just like it's 2 miles of runway, and you just go 100 miles an hour, down the runway, and there's nobody there to stop you or do anything. And because it's very rural and remote. So I'm sitting at the runway. It's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's been drizzling all night. So there's cloud cover. So I know if I'm going to see anything, it's going to be under the cloud cover. So that's, even though it's not the best weather conditions, that's at least in my favor. So I've got this open view of the sky, because I'm sitting in the runway. It's just unobstructed. And I'm watching and I'm watching. An hour goes by, an hour and a half goes by, and nothing. I'm getting a headache at this point. Like everything is shut off. So I'm in complete darkness. The car's not on, the radio's not on, nothing. I'm just sitting there watching. And the drizzle is sounding like white noise at this point. And at the time, I was a smoker. I don't anymore, thank God. But I was a smoker at the time, and I hadn't had a cigarette the whole time. So I'm like, I got to turn the car on, and I got to step outside, and I got to have a cigarette. And blah. So I do all of that. And I start to feel a little bit better. I get back in the car. I'm like, okay, I'm done with the runway. I want to go over to where the tower is. And there's a parking lot where the old tower is located. So now I'm parked in the tower's parking lot. And my view of the sky is obstructed now because the tower is kind of in front of me. It's probably 100 yards away. And the tower is just off to my left a little bit. And I'm watching the sky. And all of a sudden, there's a light in the sky. And I'm not Nomar, the investigator or the UFO researcher. I'm very much Nomar, the witness. And I'm dumbfounded by what I'm seeing. I'm like, and just watching it. I'm very human in that moment. So I'm watching it, and I look down and I'm holding my cell phone. I'm like, oh, I should probably record this. Next to me is like night vision camera and all this other gear. Don't even think of it. I look at my phone, hit record, dum dum. So I hit record and I start recording it. And then I get the bright idea like, oh, I'm going to drive underneath it. So the car's already running, and I put it in drive, and I start to move like 5 feet, not even. And as soon as I start to move, as I'm recording it, the light does this weird little twirly thing and then blinks out.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, dang, what did I just capture? So, of course, I stop the phone and I'm watching it back. I watch it back 100 times. Not a whole lot of things happened the rest of the night, but I was there for like 5 hours, right? So now I'm back at the hotel, and I'm rewatching the footage, and I'm like blowing things up and inverting, looking at the negative of it and all this stuff. And there is this weird shape that's behind it when you brighten it up and all this stuff.
Wow.
So I put it on my YouTube channel, and so people can watch it. To a skeptic, even to me, it's just a light in the sky. You know what I mean? That does this weird and then disappears. But it's compelling given the entire history of the area.
Yeah.
Something happened in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And this dum dum goes there in 2017. And I also experienced something.
Yeah, man.
Is it military? Is it extraterrestrial? I don't know, but I saw a light in the sky at a place where people saw lights in the sky.
Yeah.
It was
That's
interesting.
cool. That
Yeah.
is cool, man. How low down would you say it was?
Boy, I would put it at maybe 300 yards above the tower, maybe.
Yeah.
Really hard to gauge distance, but in the video, I believe I put some daytime photos of the tower and where I thought the UFO was in comparison to the tower. So if you watch the video, you can kind of see it, but maybe 300 yards or something above it, something like that.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
hard
and
when you record it, it's not looking how you're seeing it. Because I've done it before. I've seen
oh
stuff in the
yeah.
sky and I'm recording it. Doesn't come out how you've just seen it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely doesn't do it justice. And in the
no.
cell phone camera, I really wish I had put the night vision camera on it and like what that would have captured, either the same thing or maybe a little bit more. I don't know, but when you
Wow.
brighten it up and then I did the negative thing to it to see its inversion, there is like this weird elongated shape vertically, which is kind of interesting. And it almost looks
Yeah.
like there's two eyes at the top of this thing. You know what I mean?
Wow, man.
It's an interesting thing. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. But and the encounter lasted for like 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, and probably not even that, but it was amazing. And it was very humbling because, I wouldn't say I talk a big game, but like I'm a UFO author and researcher and sometimes investigator, and I'm having an experience. And I almost don't like having an experience because it's too much to keep track of. It becomes overwhelming because I'm a witness, I'm an experiencer. Now I've got to document it. Now I've got to do this and try to remember all the things that I want witnesses to do,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I'm talking to them. And it's really hard to keep track of it all. But I did my best and I documented it, and it's now, part of history because it's in the book. And
That's
and
awesome, man.
yeah, but
I was gonna ask you before you mentioned that if you'd seen any other UFOs yourself. So
mhm.
is that two you've seen, or have you seen a lot more?
I've I've lost count now. I knew at one point a specific number, but I'll just say generally I've seen like 15 to 20 in my entire life, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
And um UFOs become synonymous with extraterrestrial. And that's a big part of the reason why UAP was created. So I have seen 15 to 20 of them in the sky, sometimes daylight, mostly at night. And I can't explain most of them. Some of them might have been something man-made. I know that, but I still couldn't identify it. So it's technically
Yeah.
unidentified. But some of the daytime ones, I used to work for this car delivery, this auto parts delivery company, and it was wholesale. So I would drive around the state delivering to garages. And I was in this town where we had this storage unit where we would keep extra parts in case somebody in that part of the state needed something. It was in stock at the storage unit. So I'm at the storage unit and I'm kind of wrapping up, and I step out of my van and I look up and I see a silver ball in the sky. And it's a cloudless blue sky, and it's sticking out something awful, like it's right there. You can't miss it. It's a silver ball. You can't identify it as anything else other than this piece of metal hanging in the sky. And I'm like, what the? And, it all kind of happened quickly, but like I get out of the van and I'm in a state of motion where I'm walking around the van, but I get out and I look up and I see this thing as I continue to walk. And as I walk in front of the van, I look down for a second just to know where I'm going, look back, gone.
Yeah.
And I just, to this day, it infuriates me that I looked away,
Yeah.
you know.
I know that
And
feeling, brother.
yeah, yeah. And there's been other times where I'm watching something and it's hovering, and then, oh, I'm staring at an empty sky. When did it disappear? You know what I mean? Like it was there and then it wasn't. And it's weird when something just disappears in front of you. Like your brain is so used to, like, it removes your nose. You know what I mean? Like it knows what it's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, man.
and when it sees something it doesn't understand, it's confusing as hell. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm sure it's like what a stroke or something feels like, but to see something and then to not see it, it doesn't make sense. I don't know how else to say it. It was there and then it wasn't. And you've heard, a million people say the same thing, and it doesn't capture the feeling that gives you. You know, those words don't capture that feeling. But that's, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
But
It's
if but
wild, man. It's
yeah,
amazing. I do
that's
say to
cool
people,
stuff.
because I've seen, I would say, quite a few UFOs. I don't know the exact number.
Yeah,
It's not as many as you, I don't think, but I've seen a lot of weird things in the sky that I can't explain. And I do say to, because people say, like, people that haven't had this experience, I say just look as much
yeah,
as you can, look at the sky, because
yeah.
you're gonna see stuff, man.
Yeah.
I'm always looking. I'm always trying to find,
Yeah, and
you know.
it kind of brings us back full circle at such a young age, having those two experiences, one unnatural, one very natural, but it happened in the sky. And I was like, oh, I should probably pay attention. And all you got to do is look up. And I even sign my books like that to this day. It's either look up, you never know, or keep looking up. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
You're gonna see
that's
stuff.
you're gonna see stuff. You're gonna see stuff if you just pay
Yeah, man.
attention.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love it. It's wild. There's so much out there, man, that we just don't
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
It's wild. So what other UFO I know you've seen a lot. You probably won't be able to share them all, but what other compelling UFOs have you seen? Have you seen like shapes of ships or anything like that?
Well, that I saw the silver ball. I did see another daylight sighting. It's a really quick one, but I was on a beach, just like kind of beachcombing, sort of, and I looked up, and there was a silver cylinder. I'm like, that's probably just a plane, and it's at an angle, and the sun's like washing out its wing or something, and it started to actually bank like a plane would. There was still no wings. It didn't matter what way it went. There was no tail wing, there was no actual wings. I'm just seeing this silver cylinder, and I'm looking up at it, and I'm watching it, and I'm watching it, and I look down to see if anybody else is like, am I the only one seeing this thing? It wasn't a full beach, but there was other people there. Not one. Everybody was looking down, like, like finding shells or sea glass or
Yeah.
whatever. No one was looking, and of course I look back and it's gone. I'm like, dang. But there was so that was a cylinder, but there was one evening. It was kind of like an early evening in Maine during the winter or the cooler months. It gets dark really early. We have the daylight savings time thing where we set the clocks back and all this stuff. Stupid. But anyway, so it gets dark like at 4 p.m. You know what I mean? So um, my roommate, who's a skeptic, came home. I was already home from work. My roommate came home. This was like 15 years ago now. My roommate comes home from work, and I can hear her like running up the stairs. I'm like, what is she doing? I'm in like my computer room, and I'm doing some work on a computer. And I can hear her like stomping up the stairs. I'm like, what the hell's going on? She bursts into the room, and she's like, there's a UFO outside right now, and it's hovering over the neighbor's house. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, I was driving home, and this thing was following me, and I was watching it, and it was just above the trees. And I pulled into our house, and when I got out, I looked up, and it's just hovering over the neighbor's house. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go out and see this. So I go outside, and I'm on my porch, and I look at the house. We were kind of up on a hill, and the house was down in a little bit of a valley across the road. And sure enough, there was two red lights and a white light in the middle, hovering above the house. Like, in my opinion, like 100 feet above the house, like abduction level,
Wow.
hovering. But
Yeah.
it's dark, and they're bright lights, so I'm not seeing a shape, except I'm seeing two red lights and a white light in the middle, so it's creating a shape kind of like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing an actual object. So I'm just staring at this thing. Roommate didn't want to come out. She's like, screw all that. You know what I mean? And I'm looking at this thing fascinated. So I touch my pocket, and I've got my cell phone. So I pull it out. And this was a while ago. So I had one of those old Nokia brick phones, and I take a picture of it, and all you can see is like a red streak with a black background. I'm like, oh shit, okay, so that's not gonna work. So I'm watching it, and I'm not taking my eyes off it, and it starts to move slowly, diagonally up, and it probably moved like double the distance, so like another 100 feet up or something, and then it hovers again, and then just after a moment, it starts to take off at like level trajectory, very slow, like heading down the road, like following the road. And
Wow.
the road is like perpendicular to my house. So I'm here, and the road's going that way. So I hop in my car, and my car is parked with the front of the car facing the house. So I have to get in and back down the driveway, and then go down the road, and then take a left onto the main road. So I get onto the main road, and I've already lost it. I'm like, son of a bitch. So I speed down the road, and just about a mile from the road, there's like this bed and breakfast. And right next to it is this large field. So I kind of whip into this field where there's like this unobstructed view of the sky. You can see the ocean beyond it, And I'm like, okay, it's gonna come over any moment, because it was going super slow when I left. So my head's on a swivel, just like watching for this, the red lights and the white light, and it never comes. I stayed there for like an hour, and it never showed up. So it must have like banked at some point or shot straight up. I don't know.
Wow.
But it was weird. It was really weird and really cool. And that was like, since that was so long ago, shit, it might have even been 20 years ago now at this point. But
Wow,
um,
man.
it rivaled that first sighting, like to just be fully conscious and be like, I'm seeing something that should
Yeah.
not be there, and
Yeah.
there is, or at the time, there was a military installation not too far away, about a half hour away. So it could have been something military, but why it's hovering, 100 feet silently, I might add, above a
Yeah.
house, like that makes no sense to me. But could it have been military? Absolutely. Were there drones at the time for like civilians? No. So it could have been a military drone and they're just doing some tests and maybe it malfunctioned. And so it's like hovering and then it, it went up a little bit and then they finally, it started going. Like, who knows? That's possible. But yeah, it was a
That is
really
cool,
cool
man.
encounter. Yeah. Yeah.
How big would you say that was?
Oh,
Roughly?
geez. Um, I guess if I were to draw straight lines down from it to the roof of the house, it was as wide as the roof.
Wow. So that's big, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was probably what, 50 feet across, something like that. Yeah, because
Wow.
it was an average house. It's not like it was a mansion, but it wasn't a little shack either.
Yeah.
And just my memory of it now, yeah, like it seems like it would be the size of the roof. Yeah.
That is cool. That is a cool experience.
It really was. And I loved how it started with my roommate, just like, what's all this racket?
A skeptic as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. After
Yeah.
that, not so much.
Yeah, I bet,
No,
man.
yeah, not she's not a full believer, but she'll say like, that one, I don't know. I don't know about that one. you know.
Yeah. Some skeptics, I know skeptics that I think a
Oh yeah.
Bigfoot could come out, slap him in the face, and they'd still say, "I'm not sure." You
That
know?
that happened, but I'm not sure. My
Yeah,
dad's kind of like
it
that,
could have
you know.
been. Oh man, wow. Have you got any other cool UFO experience, personal experiences yourself to
Yeah.
share?
Yeah, this wasn't UFO, but I actually have a couple of creature experiences.
Oh wow. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Um, the first one, I wasn't sure if it was a dream or not. I still don't know, but I feel like I was very much conscious, but it could have been a vivid dream. But again, I'm not sure. So, anyways, this is a whole lot of years ago. It was actually a couple of years after the UFO over the house. So it's like 3 in the morning, maybe two, and I wake up and I have to pee. And where my bedroom was, you leave my bedroom and you walk into the living room. From the living room, you walk into the kitchen, and then from the kitchen, you walk into the bedroom. Sorry, the bathroom. When you walk into the kitchen, you step down, and there's two big windows right to your left. And there's an awning. We lived on the second floor, and there's an awning, and then there's the apartment below us, and then obviously the parking lot. So it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to pee. I'm very sleepy. And I'm just about to put my foot down, step down into the kitchen when I see something outside the window. And what I see looks like it's a black silhouette. I can see no features, but like a man crouched down on the edge of the awning, facing away from me. And I'm like, what is that? And I'm just lost in this, like, what the fuck is that moment? And my foot inadvertently, just because of my weight and my momentum, steps down into the kitchen. And right when that happens, its head goes like that, like it heard me.
Oh
So
wow.
then it stands up really quickly, and then with like a legitimate like thwap, like a pitcher throwing to a catcher and it catches it in the mitt, wings pop out. Yeah. And it jumps off the awning and swoops and goes and flies off. And there's railroad tracks right by the place and kind of like flies towards the tracks.
Wow.
Yeah. It freaked me out. I ended up calling a buddy when it happened. I was like, this happened. I don't know what it means. I don't even know if it's a dream. Because all of a sudden I'm back in my room and I'm on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, you're not dreaming right now. So you're awake and you're talking to me right now. Were you dreaming before? I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it. You seem very freaked out and scared and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So the next morning, I go out to the area, to the parking lot, and I'm looking up at the awning to see if I can see anything. I go back upstairs. I'm looking at the roof to see if I can see anything on the awning that showed that anything was there. I'm not seeing anything. I'm looking around the parking lot because a lot of it was dirt, and seeing if there's any footprints. I'm not seeing any footprints. In the railroad tracks, there's actually a fence, so you can't like get to them. So I'm kind of left with that experience. It was really weird.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That sounds like, I mean, Mothman. I mean, I'm just trying to
yeah,
think of what.
yeah. That has certainly crossed my mind, or other winged hominids, that people report. It's
Yeah.
certainly weird. And I've written about it in some of my books, just sharing the story. Like, this is what happened. Here's where I lived and here's what happened. And I don't know what to make of it. And
It's
I,
amazing, man.
yeah, and it was just so strange and so weird and so like scary that I just don't feel comfortable saying this happened. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I was so groggy when it happened. I just remember having the urge to pee and waking up, and I whipped the blankets off of me. Like, I remember the motion. And it's all carpet until you get into the kitchen, and I remember seeing it, and then my foot hits the floor in the kitchen, which is a step down, and I remember feeling the coldness of the floor. Like, that's all very real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
Man.
in 2020, I was very much awake, and it was 6:45 in the evening, and I was driving home, and I was about 2 or 3 miles from my house. And where I live is rural, and it's back roads, and there's not a whole lot of people. And as I'm driving down the road, there's ditches on either side of the road, to help with water and all that stuff. And then there's woods on either side. And every once in a while, you come across a house. So I'm driving, and on the left side of the road, I'm on the right side. On the left side of the road, I see my headlights hit this thing. And it's this tall, well, tall, like it's 5 or 6 feet tall, very slender, very black, like inky black thing. And I don't know if you've seen the Blair Witch movie, but
Yeah.
the little stick figure dolls that they make kind of
Yeah.
look like that. Like, it looked like its legs and torso and arms and limbs
Oh,
were
man.
made of like twisted wood, but very slender, but twisted wood. And it didn't have antlers, but it had like two things going straight up off its head. It almost looked like a Groot, from Guardians of the Galaxy. Kind of looked like that, but having two like antenna, like two sticks sticking above its head.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it's on the side of the road, and I see it take this exaggerated long step over the ditch and walk into the woods. So I'm driving, and I'm going like 45 miles per hour. So I come up to the spot really quick. So I just stop my car in the middle of the road. There's nobody else around. I put down my window because I want to hear. This happened in February of 2020. So I put down my window to hear if there's any crunching of the snow of something walking in there. I don't hear anything. But 2 seconds later, I am hit with this incredible rotting egg, rotting meat type of smell. I've never experienced that before. You hear that with demons sometimes. You hear that with Bigfoot, how they really stink sometimes. And I've never experienced it before. And it was just so awful. Like, I had to put all four windows down for the rest of my drive home to try to get that smell out of the car. I didn't hear
Wow.
anything. I didn't see anything when I was stopped. So I took off. I went back to where I thought it happened the next day. And there's no place to pull over. You just have to like kind of stop on the road. And I did for as long as I could. In the middle of the day, there's more cars going by. But I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. And again, it was only an estimate of where I thought it happened. So, but
Wow,
that
man.
was a really interesting experience.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Could, with both those creatures, entities, whatever they were, did you see any like facial features or anything like that? Or were they just a black
Um,
mass?
the first one was a complete silhouette, Even the wings, when they came out, I wasn't seeing any detail. It was all just like pure black. The second one, it was inky black, but with my headlights hitting it, there were parts of it that shined, that made it look like it was like oily, you know what I mean? And it looked like I could see like interwoven sticks. That's
Wow,
how
man.
that's what it was made up as, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I didn't see an actual face. I didn't see eyes and mouth or anything. It just looked like a bundle of sticks, like walking. I don't know. It was weird.
yeah.
Like the Blair Witch figure if it could walk,
That's
and
incredible, man.
was 5 or 6 feet tall. Yeah, it was crazy. Like when I got home, I called my best friend, told him everything that happened, and then I sent him an email, and then I sent another researcher an email like, "Here's everything that happened and what I remember." And I sent it to him. And he came back and asked me a few different questions, for clarifying. But I pretty much gave him everything, so there wasn't a whole lot to answer or to ask. So, but I wanted to make sure like another researcher couldn't like look it over and be like, well, could it have been this or this, But he
Wow.
was he was just as dumbfounded, And but I definitely was awake for that one,
Yeah, man.
you
So
know.
what do you, I know it's a difficult question, but what do you think that was? Like, if you had to say now, what you think that is?
After some further research and an interaction that I had online, which I'll tell you about in a sec, I did some research of the area. As a researcher, at least for me, I'm not really looking like right around here. You know what I mean? Um, for things to happen. So I never researched the actual town that I live in very deeply, anyways. So, in doing some digging back in 1996, it turns out that there was a UFO encounter just 2 or 3 miles down the road. Well, I saw a creature 2 or 3 miles down the road. So their encounter was it was kind of around the same time, between like 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. And they were kind of doing like their evening routines of like after dinner and homework and stuff like that. And they saw this bright light outside, and they didn't have motion detection lights. So they're like, well, what the fuck's going on outside? So they all go outside to look because there's a bright light coming down from somewhere above, So they go outside to look, and they're honestly thinking like a helicopter or something. And so they go outside and they look up, and there's a massive UFO hovering over their house. And they're like, oh my God. And they're watching this thing. And then it just takes off at a high rate of speed and shoots right up. That's at least what the encounter read. No names of witness, no actual address. There wasn't a whole lot to follow up on. I didn't find it in any newspapers. I ended up finding it on the New Fork website, the National UFO Reporting Center. So I was like, well, that's interesting. And it kind of happened in a very close proximity. So then I think it was like 2 years later, this person messages me online. And they also live in Maine. They actually live in the next town over. And they said, hey, me and my friends were like walking home the other night. And this dude, he's like 18, 19, something like that. He's like, me and my friends were like walking home the other night, and it's like 2 in the morning. And as we're walking, we can hear something like behind us and like across the street, but it seems like it's like tailing us and trying to keep its distance. But we keep looking, and sometimes we'll see something large hiding behind, a telephone pole or a car or something. And there was a very odd smell. It was a putrid kind of smell. And they never got a full on look of it, but he really, like, after doing some research and then contacting me, he thought it might have been like a Wendigo trying to interact or eat him, or he doesn't know,
Yeah,
what the hell. But I was like, oh, I never thought of a Wendigo. That's interesting.
yeah,
Huh.
man. Yeah,
And they do look kind of weird and distended. I mean, like a real Wendigo, is not reported having antlers, but this thing that I saw also didn't have antlers, but there was like two sticks sticking straight up. I don't know what the hell it was, but so I was like, that's interesting. So I kind of pondered that as well. And, a lot of Native American history here, a lot of indigenous people were in this area and still are. And so, is something like that possible? Absolutely. I to this day, I don't know what it was, but it was a fascinating experience.
I have to say, I know it's easy for me to say now, but I was thinking Wendigo when you first
Yeah.
said it, especially with the when you
Yeah,
said
yeah,
the
yeah.
things coming out of the head.
Yeah.
Man, that is wild,
It
but
is. It is.
amazing.
Yeah, and, it didn't wanna bother with me, because I stopped where I feel like it stepped into, like, it took, like, 3 seconds to, like, get to it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I see it, I'm like, "Whoa, what is that?" It steps over and goes into the woods, now it's not there, zoom, and now I'm at the spot, and I look right over, nothing. Pulled down the
yeah,
window, I don't hear anything. Boom, I'm hit with the scent, and
wow,
I'm like, "That was crazy. What the hell just happened? I gotta get home and call my buddy and, type it all up."
yeah, yeah, man, for
It was
sure.
nuts. Yeah, so that was really interesting and cool. Like, I feel privileged to have had that encounter.
Yeah, that's an incredible experience. I mean,
Yeah,
I often think with these things because I mean, if someone else experienced that and saw something like that in the forest and got that smell straight away, that's if they're that way inclined, that's a Bigfoot, you
right,
know? I
right.
find that so interesting. A lot of these things are very similar,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
just your interpretation of what they are, maybe.
Yeah, it really is, because it was at night and my lights hit it, I can only describe it as how I perceived it, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? And, like, it really could have been anything. It certainly wasn't a person.
yeah, yeah.
But it was 5 or 6 feet tall, and it was hominid,
That's
bipedal.
wild, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Such a cool experience.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I wasn't as scared as I was seeing the thing on the roof, like, that was terrifying, but seeing the thing, I was just like it all happened so fast, I was just like, "Ah, what? Whoa, what are you I
Yeah,
gotta get home and write this down," you know what I mean? And that's like how quick it happened. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to process, but 4 years later, and granted it happened February 2020, come March 2020 the world fell apart, you know what I mean? So it feels like it was 10 years ago now, but um yeah, it's I when I reflect on it now, it's a really cool experience, and I feel like I should have been more scared than I was, but I was just like super fascinated and like, what the hell was that? And I was really taken aback by the smell. I just had never experienced that before, and I thought it was really cool. I mean, it
yeah,
was awful, but it was really cool just to like when I read that in an encounter now, I'm like, oh, I know what that's like. That's cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
man. That is cool. That is a super interesting experience, man,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. And the first one that wasn't was a scary negative experience. Still
Yeah.
incredible thing to see.
Yeah, and,
But
a couple of weeks, maybe a month after that, I saw the thing on the roof. I had a tendency to be a little lazy, still am, and, I was, smoking outside the kitchen window. I would open it up, put the screen up, and I would lean out and have a smoke, and when I was done, I'd crush it and flick it out into the parking lot, which is an awful thing to do, and I would go out later on, pick it up, and put it in a little can, you know? But so I'm out there one night and it's like midnight and I stayed in the kitchen. I would kneel on the floor in the kitchen. That's how low the windows were. I would kneel on the floor and I could like put my top half of my body outside the window and smoke fairly comfortably. So I'm out there one night and this was like, a month later, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later. I'm not even scared, because well, I guess it was like midnight and like the people below us are still awake. And I lived in a city that was a city at that time. And so there's just tons of noise and stuff going on. So I wasn't really scared, but I did know that, hey, a few weeks ago, there was something
yeah,
maybe sitting there. But anyway, so I'm out there smoking and I start hearing, no joke, what sounds like beep boops type of sounds, like computer sounds coming from the railroad tracks. It sounds like robot sounds. Like, if you think of, like, a 1960s robot, beep, bop, beep, bop, beep, bop, beep, beep, like, that's what I'm hearing. I'm like, what is that?" And I'm like, "Shush," I'm trying to tell the city to be quiet so I can listen, right? But beep, bop, bop, and then I start hearing heavy footsteps on the gravel. There's, like, gravel in between the tracks, you know what I mean? And I'm here, I'm like,
Oh
any
wow.
any second I'm gonna see a goddamn robot walk past me because the railroad tracks ran past, like you could see down the railroad tracks and it was coming from this way and I'm facing this way and it's coming this way and I'm gonna see it any second. It's getting louder and beep, bop, beep, bop, and then it just stops. I'm like, whoa, and I'm listening and I'm listening and it's just gone. It lasted little less than a minute, you know, and I could hear it getting closer. And I'm like, there was just was like, there was just a robot on the railroad tracks. I swear to God. So
Yeah.
flick the cigarette. I run downstairs and I can go to the fence of the railroad tracks. And I'm trying to look down the tracks to see if I can see lights or anything. There's just nothing, And I'm like, I have no idea what that was. I mean,
Man.
could somebody have had weird experimental music on or something? I don't know. I don't know. But I was definitely awake and there were weird beep boop sounds.
Yeah.
It was weird, man. And like
Man.
serious stomping,
Yeah.
walking. And I'm like, man, I don't know what that was. But again, it was like 15, 20 years ago. And I don't know what the hell to make of it. And it was like 2 to 4 weeks after the weird maybe thing that was on the roof. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
So it was possibly that entity in another form, or I don't know,
Oh
but
shit. I didn't even
it,
think of that.
man,
I
could have
just
been
I
could have
because
been
it's
connected.
it could have been. It just the thing on the roof seems so organic, and the thing that I heard seems so mechanical. I didn't even put them together. I'm just
Yeah.
like, this place is weird. This is what I
Yeah.
thought. You know what I mean? And I wasn't even seriously researching at that time. I was just on the cusp of it. I was like 2 or 3 years away from like giving it a serious go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was still collecting stories and stuff, and I loved having the experiences, and I would write them down and all that great stuff. But I wasn't like I'm a researcher. You know what I mean? That was still a few years away.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff, and it's fun to tell those stories and reflect back on them, and to be in the 2024 frame of mind, like, oh, what else could have been? It's
Yeah.
interesting process to do.
And that is cool when you talk to people about your experiences and they give their opinion of it, and you're like, yeah, you know what? I never thought of it like that, and
Yeah, yeah,
it can change the way you think of it. It's wild, man.
absolutely.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
And I'm very open to interpretations. And when that kid said Wendigo, I was like, "Oh, I never thought about that for
Yeah.
this thing, because it just, from what artist renditions of Wendigos, it just didn't look like that. When I saw it, I immediately thought Blair Witch, you know?
Yeah. 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 That's what you do, though, man. You take it to what you know, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
your perception of it. That's so wild, though, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome experiences. Have you had any other amazing experiences to share, man? Because you blow my mind with some of these experiences tonight, bro.
uh, amazing.
I
A
mean, every
couple.
paranormal experience is
Yeah.
amazing, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know?
I used to be a ghost investigator, a ghost hunter,
Yeah.
paranormal investigator, and I had a team for a little while, and we went to it was mostly residential homes that we went to. We did a business one time, but there was this house that we were investigating, and it was like one of the first investigations that we were doing, and um, I was with another investigator. I think another one was upstairs, but it was me and this other investigator. And he was in the living room, and I was like over by the staircase. So we were like a room apart, but we could see each other because of the open doorways. And in between us, this pillar of light formed. And it was almost like just a piece of a glowing piece of plywood. It was just like this weird pillar of light, but it was flat, but it glowed and it was white. And it was just hovering in the middle of the room. And I'm looking at it. And when I look past it, I'm looking at the investigator. So it's in between us. I'm like, are you effing seeing this? And he's like, yeah. Like, what the hell is this? And all of a sudden, it rushes me. It comes towards me. And there's no time to react. All I felt was this gust of wind not really go through me, but like, I feel wind. Like if you were to take a folder or a book and like fan yourself, it was like that kind of wind I felt. And I was like, whoa. I was like, did you see that? And he's like, yeah, it just went right through you. I'm like, oh, it went through me. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, whoa. And it was crazy, man. Like that's what happened. I don't know what it was. I can't
Yeah.
say it was a ghost. It could have been something otherworldly. It could have been an ultra terrestrial. I don't freaking know. Our lenses change how we see things, throughout the years. But one thing that I really strive to do, and Mike Stevens is this way, and there's a lot of us that are this way, where there's the different aspects of the paranormal, like hauntings, Bigfoot, or cryptids, UFO stuff. And if you're an investigator, it's really hard to not look at something through your lens. A Bigfoot guy might be like, oh, maybe that was like um, a spirit of a creature or something, and a ghost investigator would say, oh, that's a ghost. And somebody like me might say like, oh, maybe that was some sort of you know alien type of thing. But I want to go beyond that, and I think all of this stuff is under this one umbrella of strange shit, and
Yeah.
maybe they're all connected, and because it didn't feel ghostly, it felt otherworldly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean extraterrestrial. That doesn't mean Bigfoot. That doesn't mean a ghost. It means something friggin' strange. And I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. But all I saw was a pillar of light. And apparently it went through me. Nothing else happened. And I'm fine. And, there was no ramifications of having that happen. It was just really cool, but I don't know what it was. And I just want to continue to be as open-minded and as unbiased as possible. Sometimes it's really hard to be unbiased, but I try, especially I kind of have practice of it because with my documentaries, with my podcast, and especially with my writing, I try to leave it up to the reader or the consumer to decide what they choose to believe, and so I don't want to paint a picture for them. I want to paint a picture, but you get to decide what it looks like.
Yeah.
So I hope to stay that way.
Yeah, man. Well, you answered my question, Mark. The question I was going to ask you is, do you think this is all connected? And
Yeah. Yeah,
it
I
does
do.
seem to be, man. It's
It
like
really does.
I was talking to Timothy Renner a little while back, and he was
Oh,
saying
cool.
that if you see an orb in the forest, or if you see an orb in a house, or if you see an orb in the sky, if you see it in the sky, it's a UFO. If you see it in a
Right.
house, it's a ghost. If you
Yeah.
see it in a forest, it's a possibly Bigfoot or a cryptid or something like that.
Yeah,
So
dog
it's
man or
just,
something.
dog man, yeah, man.
Yeah.
What all we know is that there's a lot more in this world that we can't explain,
Yeah.
and
And
it's
there's so many
fascinating.
witnesses. You put that many witnesses to a phenomena in a court of law, and you're going to sway a jury every time. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like that's too many witnesses, and
100%.
you can't tell me every one of them's lying. You
No,
can't. You
no,
can't.
100%, man.
Statistic alone,
Yeah.
not everyone's lying. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, even if one person is 100% right, it's real, and
Yeah.
and you know, so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
wild, man.
Yeah. It's cool stuff. And you know, like when the whole Fresno Nightcrawler video came out, and that became like the rage for a little while, at least in our world. You know what I mean? Like for somebody not into this stuff, and you see that video, like how can you not want to know everything about it? You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah,
get it. I'm like,
yeah.
how do you not want to know everything?
I know, man. I know.
It's such cool stuff, and to be able to contribute to the field now, feels really good. For a while I kind of felt lost, in my late teens and early 20s, and like I want to do something with this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. Also, I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know what to do, and but
You're not an
I
idiot, man.
well,
That's for
I appreciate it. I am, but I appreciate it.
sure.
But it's like it's okay to not know what you're doing as long as you're genuine and as long as you're honest. Just do the best you can. And if somebody's just starting out, or if they just have a passing interest, that's cool. Just write stuff down, just do it your way. There's another thing that you'll hear sometimes on shows like this is the person sitting over here will be like, well, here's how you should do it. And I'm here to tell you there's no rules,
Yeah.
and that you can make your own path. You know what I mean? To get a book published these days is vastly different than it was 20 years ago, than it was 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And to make a documentary, you can do it on your phone now, and to have a podcast, you can just use the mic on your phone. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, man.
everything is attainable to everybody now. And I think that it's really leveled the playing field. You also get a whole bunch of trash entertainment, but there are some gems that are in there, and if you're genuine about it, you're going to stick with it and you're going to keep making really cool stuff. And I'm a real big advocate of uh, the creative arts, and because I'm a creator and a storyteller at heart. I've been a musician since I was like a kid, and kind of had this parallel obsession with music and the paranormal my whole life.
Yeah.
And that's translated where I don't release albums as much as I used to and stuff anymore, but I still need to scratch that audio itch, so I got into podcasting and all that good stuff. And so I'm just a huge proponent of people being creative. You don't have to always grind away at a 9 to 5 the rest of your life. You can, if you try, and it's going to suck for a while, but if you try, you might be able to do something different. And it's cool when, at least for me, when I was younger, to hear somebody who's sitting here now to say, like, you know what, it's attainable,
Yeah,
and
man.
it's not always great, but
Yeah.
it's
But
attainable,
it's,
and it makes life interesting.
and if you're enjoying yourself and you're
Yeah.
enjoying the journey that you're on, yeah,
Yeah, like
man.
I did the corporate life for way too long for a few different companies, and it kills your soul, it eats your soul. That's the real killer. That's the real demons out there. And
Yeah.
if you can get out from under those fluorescent light bulbs, that's a good thing.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Mm.
Well, I'm glad you did, man, because you're bringing us amazing books, amazing stuff, podcasts, documentaries. I love it all, man. I'm going to be ordering your book, that is for sure.
Cool.
Um, can you tell the listeners where they can find you, man, and your awesome work?
Sure. My name's pretty unique, Nomar Slevik. So if you just Google that, a lot of my stuff will come up. You can also go to slevikstore.customer.site, and you can, get to my books and order them there. But if you enjoy the free shipping and all that good stuff, you can go to Amazon, just type my name in, you'll see all the stuff of mine that you can order, which is really cool. It's also available on like Kindle ebook type of stuff. Um, and I have another site that's called allmylinks.com/Slevik. And that's where you can get access to podcasts and documentaries and everything that I do. And yeah, so it's easy as that.
Awesome, awesome, brother. Well, I'll share the links will be in the show description.
Cool.
Noma, I have loved talking to you tonight, man. I hope this is the first of many conversations.
Absolutely.
Keep up the great work, brother. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for giving us your time tonight, man. I really appreciate it.
No, I really appreciate it. And you are someone who's really easy to talk to, and
Oh,
that's always
thank you.
helpful in this kind of situation. So thank you
Thank
for
you very
making it
much,
easy.
brother.
Yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate it, man. Well, let's hope this is the first of many, and you're welcome back anytime, brother.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much for listening, guys. We'll see you back very, very soon.